So we talked about semiotics, the study of signs and how humans create signs to communicate. Well, semiotics is closely related to linguistics. We can also study language in a way that's similar to the way we study semiotics. The two are closely related. One thing humans do is we often communicate by resemblance. So a picture of something is communicating by resemblance. A picture of a rose can signify a rose, but there are other connotations there. It could also signify romance. It could signify love. A picture of a camera on our cell phone, the little icon, is taken from an actual camera. And the artificial sound effect when we push that button is the clicking sound that an old school film camera would make. So we communicate by resemblance, but that's not the only way we communicate. We also communicate by making logical conclusions, such as where there's smoke, there's a fire. There's cause and effect logic at work there. Another example might be, well, I saw your light on, so I thought you were awake. Or, well, your car was in the driveway, so I knew you were home. Logical connections from one thing to another. If we look at this picture here, we see flags. And what does this tell us? Again, it depends on our focus, right? It depends on our knowledge, our experiences, our focus, and the context. So in this picture, we see the American flag on top. What do we learn from that? That we're in the United States, and the flag flies highest. Now, what about all the other flags? What do they show? This is a scoreboard from Wrigley Field, the baseball home of the Cubs in Chicago. Now, if you're a baseball player, what do you learn from this image? The wind is blowing out to left. So when you hit the ball, it's probably going to carry farther to left field. The pitcher needs to know this, the batter needs to know this, the outfielders need to know this. So that is a sign for them. All right? It's a cause and effect logical sign. We can also make a logical conclusion based on the no diving sign that we see here as well. We've come to know through a different process, which I'll talk about next, a process called convention, but we've come to know that a red circle with a line through it means not allowed. So in this case, the picture of diving indicates that diving is not allowed because it's got that red line through it with the circle around it. The words help, but if you didn't speak the language, that's not going to help you at all. The picture is what's going to help you. So another way we communicate is through a process called association. We associate one image with another, and this is called convention. If you imagine someone wearing a cross as a necklace, for example, the cross is a symbol of a religious image. Sometimes the cross will be a crucifix in which there's a depiction of Jesus on the cross. At other times, it'll just be a cross. Now, when that was originally invented, the cross was a cruel torture device used for executing criminals. Imagine today you see someone wearing a necklace like a gold chain with an image of an electric chair. You might be scratching your head and saying, what? It doesn't have the same connotations, but that's what it would have meant if someone were wearing that jewelry before the religious connotations took over, before we had those religious associations with the cross. The same is true with this Mercedes-Benz symbol. And so we associate this brand with luxury, with German engineering, with expensive vehicles. What does this tell us? We have learned a convention. A convention is an unwritten rule or a custom, something that we agree to do, but we don't have to do. In America, we drive on the right side of the road. That's a law. Yet, in most instances, we walk on the right side of the hallway. That's not a law. It's a convention. It's something that we've grown accustomed to doing. So it is not the law, but it is a convention, a custom, an unwritten rule that we follow. And we learn through this. Association is where we associate one thing with something else. We also see by visualizing images based on words. And I'm going to introduce a guest professor to tell us a little more about that and give us an example.
Hello, boys and girls. What do you picture when I say the word tree? Do you picture a coconut tree? Do you picture a climbing tree? Or do you picture a normal tree? Or a Christmas tree? Can I see any nods here, students? Yes, Emily. What do you picture when I say the word car? A race car. Nice, Emily.
Nice job, Emily.
You know, does he move his hands?
He doesn't move his hands, buddy.
I thought he did.
Nope. He moves his head from side to side. I did not tell him there's an Emily in this class, by the way. So he's just guessing. I guess there's an Emily in every class. Well done. But when you hear the word tree, what do you picture? What comes to mind? Some people might picture an image like this. Oftentimes our imagery excludes the roots of the tree. They're there, and we know they're there, but they don't immediately come to mind because we can't see them. They're underground. How about this? Could tree also be a family tree? Could a tree chart come to mind? It could. It depends on the context, your background, your focus, and your expectations. Words change in meaning, and you need to realize this. Think about the word gay in the 1920s, and then think about that word now. The word has a completely different meaning over a 100-year period. There are many words like this, and many words have multiple meanings. The phrase knocked up in the United States means what? There's actually a movie called Knocked Up. If someone is knocked up, that means she's pregnant. Now in Britain, if you say I knocked her up or I knocked up someone, it means you called them or knocked on their door. All right, totally different meaning because it's a different culture. So the word meaning changes. Here's another example. When I first moved here, I drove past a store with the word pasties on the side wall. And I looked at it, I was like, they forgot the R in pastries. That's so funny. That's a bakery that misspelled the word pastries. Ha ha. And then I later found out that it's this delicious food that is very popular in the UP and other parts of Michigan and some other parts of the US, most notably the Midwest. But if you look up that word online, a different pronunciation of the word spelled the same way, you can get a totally different result. This is a result from a Google safe search. Pasties or pasties? When you see it on paper, it's different than hearing it out loud. So words have a different meaning in different cultures. They have different meanings based on what we're expecting, and they have different meanings based on pronunciation. All of those things are factors in communicating effectively. A famous linguist, C.S. Peirce, identifies 3 different types of signs that humans use frequently. An icon, or an iconic sign, resembles what it stands for. A portrait on the wall resembles the person that it's portraying. An indexical sign, or an index, has a logical connection to what it stands for. A symbol is a sign that only has conventional meaning. There's no logical connection to what it stands for. We have to learn the meaning of symbols. Here are 3 other examples. Which of these traffic signs is iconic? Which one resembles what it stands for? I can't hear you, but I know you just said the bike. And you're right, it is the bike because it's got a picture of a bike. How about an index? Which of these has an index? Yes, it's the one on the right. It's the road narrows sign. We can logically connect that because we see one lane continuing and another lane going closer to it. So we can make sense out of that. We could logically figure it out. Now, what about the one in the middle? Unless you're from Britain, you probably don't recognize this. This is a symbol. You have to learn this. You have to be taught what this means. This is a traffic device. It's not one that we have in the United States, but it means no vehicles allowed. So those are three types of signs, according to C.S. Peirce: an icon, an index, and a symbol. Know those terms. Now, according to Ferdinand de Saussure, the relationship between the signifier and what it means, the marker, must be learned. We have to communicate that to someone else. We don't automatically know that. And we can also use signs to deceive. We can use signs to lie. If you've ever heard of a poker face, it's someone trying to keep their face from showing any kind of emotions. In poker, the game is not always won by who has the best cards. It's by who plays their cards right. And by playing them right, you're reading what other people have, you're reading their emotions, and trying to make a play that will counter what you think they have. So when you're playing poker, you try not to show any signs at all. Dyed hair is another example. Is that naturally blonde hair, or is that dyed blonde hair? Codes are how we create and interpret signs. Cultures have codes. Written language is a code. Traffic signs are codes. Fraternities and sororities have their own codes. Different groups have different norms of behaviors and customs. Those are also codes. So humans communicate through codes. So one way we create meaning is through a process called metonymy. That is, meaning through association. We associate one thing with another. Here's an example of an old commercial.
The finer things in life. Happily, some are affordable, like Grey Poupon Dijon mustard. Grey Poupon is so fine, it's even made with white wine. Its original French Dijon recipe adds distinctive flavor to beef, pork, and poultry, salad dressing and sauces, and of course, sandwiches. So enjoy one of life's finer pleasures.
Pardon me, would you have any Grey Poupon? But of course.
Grey Poupon. It even has wine.
So Grey Poupon is trying to associate itself with luxury. This is an age-old marketing process that encourages people to spend a little more because they think they're getting something better. And it's probably just got a little extra flavoring of some kind. But this is a very old marketing technique. You associate your product with luxury and people will buy it. They'll spend more for it. So metonymy is one way we create meaning. Another way is through analogies. Analogies are when we compare something to another. A metaphor is an analogy that does not use like or as when we're making the comparison. A metaphor says, my love is a rose. And a simile says, my love is like a rose. Synecdoche is another way we create meaning. Synecdoche is a rhetorical term that means we use the whole to represent a part, or we use a part of something to represent the whole. An example of that would be the Pentagon. The Pentagon is a building in Washington, D.C. with 5 sides. But when we say, the Pentagon said today that the U.S. military... Wait a minute, a building is talking? No, the building is not talking. When we say Pentagon, we're referring to the military. If we say the White House, we're referring to the president or the president's administration. If we say Madison Avenue, we're referring to the advertising industry. If we say Hollywood, we're referring to the film industry. Those are examples of synecdoche. Another way we create meaning is through a process called condensation, where we create a new sign or symbol out of existing signs or symbols. Some linguistic examples of this would be a spork, which is a combination of spoon and fork, or skorts, combination of skirt and shorts. Right? So it's a different design and a different word for that that combines those two previous words. Another way to create meaning is called displacement. That's where we transfer meaning from one sign to another. And an example of this would be phallic symbols. A rocket is considered a phallus. A lot of feminist scholars see a rocket or a bullet because of their shape. They see those as looking like a phallus or a penis. So phallic symbols, they think of these as a symbol of male aggression and violence. So they are weapons. They're designed to kill. And this is a symbol for violence that comes from males. Male-dominated cultures have been much more likely to go to war. All right? And so that's their theory. So the rockets represent male violence, aggression, and conquest. And they just happen to be shaped in a way that's similar to a phallus. Now, other people might argue that, maybe they're shaped that way because they're more aerodynamic and therefore more efficient. But this is a theory. And it's an example of a transfer of meaning from one sign to another. This brings up this hilarious scene from the movie Austin Powers. You've got to watch it.